Summertime and the living is easy.
Okay, well, Steve and I have been for the last almost 2 hours doing a Compassion Keys session for me. I'm in Gulf Shores, Alabama. I've been here a few days doing some ancestral clearing after a couple of nights ago. I had a series of nightmares that brought up some deep repressed issues that I finally realized it wasn't my own stuff. It was coming from ancestral lineage. So I reached out to Steve and I said, I'm going to come up here and spend time at the beach around the wind and the water and the air and the sun, and use those forces to help me clear this stuff. So tonight we did this session, and we went to my 4-year-old self, which was the farthest memory I could access of to where these repressed feelings have begun. So during this process, what Steve led me through has been remarkable. I feel like the charge of resentment and fear and even some degree of rage that's been hidden beneath this surface of anxiety has gotten a lot of release. So that sets up the context of what this video is about. So I want to let Steve talk a little bit about what he observed, because the reason I wanted to do this video is encouraging anyone who wants to deep dive into their own repressed dysfunctional patterns that may be coming from ancestors. You may think that you have the problem, that you're the problem, but until you go deeper into it, you don't realize the influences and the programming that's behind it. So thank you, Steve. Please tell me what you experienced as we went through this.
Yeah, thank you, Leo. Absolutely. I love what you said. And the reason I'm so passionate about this and excited and in my element when it comes to liberation with regards to these traumas that we carry, in order to cope with them, like we explained, a little bit similar to how the physical body will pocket a toxin away so that it doesn't seep into the body and make it sick. And then if there's a fast or a juice fast or a cleanse or something like that, the body gets the signal and the message to actually release the toxin out through the elimination channels because it's safe to do so. And it has that innate intelligence built into it. And I have found that the same thing goes for the energetic system as well, and that pockets of trauma store in the body, and that when the call arrives at a person's life, that it is safe to release what it is that is blocking the person and holding them back from their evolution, then the resources become available. And the interesting thing about trauma is that in order to just get by in the day-to-day world successfully, then that trauma is gradually known about less and less and less. And also what happens is, because it's held so privately, is that one point of view is maintained and generally fixed to, and that fixation then informs the personality from coping mechanisms and the viewpoint that's held in order to justify the personality and the behaviors that develop. When a person jumps into a Compassion Keys session, they reveal the story And in revealing the story and the significant people in it, then by allowing a second viewpoint into that very personal story and fixation of opinion and felt experience, there is some movement that's able to occur, seeing it from different positions, different viewpoints, and reframes. And this is all done through the lens of self-directed compassion, which means that it's not threatening to the system. It's very safe, and that compassion allows for these stories to be seen differently and reimagined in order to naturally release the hold that those stories that felt so absolutely true inside the system can be released and create space where that hurt took up all the space and dictated a behavior, usually in a really reactive way where it feels like there's no choice but to actually respond from that hurt place where that trauma is involved. And in helping to release this tension and to clear, then all of a sudden choice becomes available when that old pattern seeks to run again. It's like it can be interacted with all of a sudden. And I think that was what we discovered, was these behaviors that are conditional, that try to get an outcome but kind of go insane against themselves, because no matter how hard they try, they can't get the outcome that they're trying to get, which is really often a childhood thing.
What was really neat about the process is we actually did it as a dialogue, and I remember that Donna was always very interested in John Bradshaw, who back in the 80s or 70s he kind of introduced the idea of going to the child's self that was traumatized, to go back in time and take that child out of the environment. But what you're doing is another level beyond what he was advocating, because it becomes an actual dialogue with someone that uses the high frequency of a compassionate heart. And it's not that you're having to do this by yourself. You're doing it with someone who's, like Steve is acting like a midwife. He's helping you rebirth this process in you. And like I said, we went back to my 4-year-old self, and I'd like to ask you, when we got to the part where you asked me, where were we when we started? You said, what was the charge? And by charge, that's a term that Steve used when we did our podcast before. It's an emotional frequency, energetic condition, 1 to 10. I said, well, I was about an 8. And he said, well, where are you after we went through this process? Where is that 4-year-old now? And I said, 2. And he said, well, what is the charge? And I revealed to Steve, I said, well, even though this part of me understands what happened, it understands the influence and the programming from my family lineage, the ego part of me, the facade, the false self, was still harboring resentment. Like, I don't want to give up. I don't want to forgive. I don't want to let go into the understanding and release it. If I do, I have no more weaponry. You remember when I said that?
Yeah.
I would like you to comment on how that came out for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, the beauty of this modality is that it absolutely seeks to meet the part where it is in its subjective experience. And I think one of the areas that as adults, trauma doesn't doesn't get its true experience known is because the adult tends to say to the child, well, look, I'm an adult now, let's look at this objectively. And it wasn't that bad, or, like these dismissive things, because the discomfort of actually sitting down with the child and stopping and being present and actually saying, you know what, I'm going to sit here with you as long as you want, need, or feel. Tell me exactly how it is for you. What's the truth of your experience without somebody needing to change it in any way, shape, or form? And it goes, whoa, well, let me tell you this. And you're like, okay, yeah. Well, that sounds really hard. I'm sorry that happened. Oh my goodness, that must have, this sort of effect is not directly what we do, but it's the energy of it, which is, hey, I want to know exactly your experience. Now's the safe time for you to tell me. I've rocked up. I've come back as an adult to want to know. I want to know. I'm here. And so when we were talking about, you said there's about a 2 out of 10's the charge, and there was this thing of you've had this realization of understanding around the position of the different people in your story and the way that you saw them, and you could have empathy for them. It's still like, well, there's still a bit inside that's like, and that bit, I just follow what wants to be known and allow it to have its experience without judgment. And that's the key thing. And I think what so many of us wanted and want is for somebody to have their own presence that is not dependent on how that part expresses itself in order to maintain like the connectedness or whatever. If you don't have to worry about your adult self holding itself, then what will that invite? And usually it's the bravery of those hurt parts to give the experience exactly how it is and release the charge that they've been holding on to for feeling so not allowed for so long.
I'll tell you what's the impact it had on me is, I've always heard people say, everyone in your life is a mirror, and the trouble is if a person's mirroring back your shadow, there's a tendency to resist it. But what Steve does is he is a mirror, but he adds compassion to the process of being a mirror. So there's no tendency to react fearfully to the shadow. That was my experience this time. This is the second time I've had this experience. The first time, I think it was back in January. And the process we went through then actually launched for me the awareness that I needed to go do some clearing in Arizona. So anyone who's read my book, Primal Conscious, Living, Loving, and Dying, you would know the story of why I had to go to Arizona. And there's a video on my YouTube channel called the Arizona Clearing Ritual. You can watch that. But I want to give Steve credit here. It was this Compassion Keys process that brought me to the point where I was ready to go do that clearing. So there is an effect that goes on that is a cumulative thing. You don't get a quick fix like this, but if you're sincerely wanting to go deep inside yourself and break down these dysfunctional patterns, especially with relationships. Relationships are the most difficult avenue that we have to go through in this world because it releases the awareness of the shadow. And to me, that's what a relationship is made for. And if you don't want to face the shadow, you're not going to have a very successful evolutionary leap in consciousness, you know.
Yeah, well, and it's by having what you don't want that you get pushed towards what you do want. So if there is just relationship after relationship of discontent, it'll be like that frustration builds up like a vice until it's like, okay, I've got to face the thing that I don't want to face, and it's like, ugh, and the pain acts as a catalyst. So it's all good. It's all beautiful in any way that it occurs, and it's awareness. And
you know, and I wanted to, at the end of our session that we did, I wanted Steve to record this so we could, while we're in the middle of, you know, we were in this process, tell what happened. And so real quick, Steve is in Bali now. And if somebody wanted to book a session, can you do it while you're there?
yeah,
Or do you
absolutely.
need to wait?
No, absolutely. So they can book with me while I'm here. I have a scheduling tool. So after an initial discussion and a little introduction of what's coming up and what wants to be worked with, I'll forward a link to book in, and whatever's in the calendar is available. And we move in and explore this stuff and start peeling the layers back.
Okay. So that's all for this episode, folks. Till next time, when Steve and I have another go round of deep diving into the inner stuff. All right. So we'll say goodbye.
Yeah. Thanks.
So hush, little baby, don't you cry. Summertime.